My next patron question is from Zigaru, who wants to know about an alternate universe involving a celebrated animation studio. What if Pixar was never bought by Disney, given that they ended their partnership in early 2004 before Iger took charge of Disney and eventually bought them? With that scenario, would Pixar have remained independent and started new deals with other studios, or could they have been bought by another studio? Would Disney continue to run Circle 7 Animation, while Walt Disney Animation would be run differently without any input from Pixar? But most importantly, would Pixar have been better off without Disney? This is a fascinating what if, because it actually would have a major effect on the animation world. Like the question mentioned, there was a brief period when Disney and Pixar were at odds with each other, and Cars was almost the last Pixar movie released by Disney. It was considered a genuine possibility that Pixar would end up partnering with a new studio, with Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox among the places considered as possibilities for their next home. One of the main sticking points of their Disney contract was that Disney retained the rights to the films and characters created by Pixar. So if they never bought Pixar, Disney would have made Toy Story 3 and Monsters, Inc. 2 without them, with scripts already being written and employees being hired for Circle 7 Animation. So we would have seen a Toy Story movie where Buzz Lightyear gets recalled back to his factory in Taiwan, and a Monsters, Inc. sequel where Mike and Sully end up in the human world. It's also likely Disney would have made sequels to Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and Cars, which would have wildly different stories than the movies we did get. As for Pixar itself, let's say partnered with another studio. Ratatouille, WALL-E, and Up would have been Warner Brothers, Fox, or Sony releases, and it would have been interesting to see how they would have marketed them and what release dates they would have chosen. Meanwhile, since Pixar would not have been able to make Toy Story 3 and Cars 2, what would they have released in 2010 and 2011 instead? Would John Lasseter have directed another original film? Would Lee Unkrich? Unkrich had pitched a movie to Pixar in 2006, which was about pets living in a Manhattan apartment and involving a murder mystery, but he went on to direct Toy Story 3 instead. Maybe in this alternate universe, that would have been Pixar's 2010 release. And while not a Pixar production, would Andrew Stanton still have directed John Carter? After all, he was the person who asked Disney to buy the film rights so he could make this passion project. But would Fox or Warner or whoever Pixar developed a relation with been willing to produce the film, let Stanton direct, and spend all that money on it? Back at Disney, the direct-to-video sequels would have continued, as they were working on ones like Pinocchio 2 and Dumbo 2 when Disney bought Pixar, and John Lasseter was allowed to cancel production on any more of them. Tinkerbell was being worked on too, before Lasseter came in and ordered changes, so that would have been a different movie. And then we have Walt Disney Animation Studios. Meet the Robinsons would have been slightly different, with the ending getting the biggest change. Chris Sanders' American Dog would have reached screens instead of Bolt, and Glenn Keane's Rapunzel would not have turned into Tangled. Disney had been developing a movie set in the world of video games for a while, with one of the working titles being Reboot Ralph. The version of Wreck-It Ralph we know would not exist in this timeline, especially since Lasseter was the person who brought Rich Moore to Disney. A movie based on the Snow Queen had also been something Disney had been trying to get off the ground for a while, so would either stay stuck in development or the produced film would have been very different from Frozen. Jennifer Lee's career would have probably gone in a different direction too. Meanwhile, The Princess and the Frog does not happen in this timeline, and we would have seen Ron Clements and John Musker make a movie at a different studio. Maybe Lasseter would have even invited them to make something at Pixar. The idea for Moana originated with Clements and Musker, so that could have wound up a Pixar production rather than Disney Animation. Zootopia might still have come into fruition under WDAS though, since the idea was longtime Disney animator Byron Howard's brainchild, and the concept seems hard to resist. Of course, as we've learned from other what-if questions I've answered, Disney not buying Pixar would have affected other studios too. If Chris Sanders was still able to make American Dog and continued his career at Disney, he would not have gone over to DreamWorks Animation and gotten assigned to direct How to Train Your Dragon. As Sanders and Dina Bloy was so pivotal to shaping that film, moviegoers would have seen a much different take on Cressida Cowell's book. Now let's say whichever distributor Pixar decided to team up with chose to buy the studio, like Disney did in our timeline. If it was Warner Brothers, would Pixar serve as their principal feature animation studio? Do they still pick up the Lego Movie or produce Storks? And what would David Zaslav have done with Pixar? If 20th Century Fox had bought Pixar, Fox would have both West and East Coast animation studios, although Pixar and Blue Sky have long had a cordial relationship. If Rupert Murdoch had still chosen to sell the movie studio to Disney in this timeline, that would have made for a curious reunion. I do think it was ultimately a good thing that Disney bought Pixar. As much as people grumble about the sequels that followed the purchase, it's good the filmmakers could continue to utilize the characters they created. Disney has also provided a safety net, and with Steve Jobs, who was so key to the studio's negotiations, passing away, I don't know how Pixar would have dealt with contracts under other distributors. Pixar's first box office flop was The Good Dinosaur, well after they had already been established at Disney, and it did not affect them much. But maybe in this alternate timeline and under a different marketing team, Pixar would have gotten their first flop sooner, and that would have hurt them in a much bigger way. So ultimately, between these two possible timelines, I do prefer the one where Pixar becomes a part of the Disney family. Thank you for your question, Zigaru.